The golden light of dawn spilled across the endless plains of the Masai Mara, tinting every blade of dry grass with a soft, amber hue. The air held a stillness only found in the early hours of the dry season, before the wind rose, before the herds stirred, before the chase began. Birds chirped gently in the acacia trees, and somewhere in the distance, a jackal's cry broke the silence. Juma, a young elephant calf barely a year old, stood alone near the edge of a muddy riverbank, his wide, gray ears flapping uncertainly. The water had receded with the dry season, but the currents still held a deceptive strength. Moments ago, the herd had crossed in a flurry of trumpets and heavy splashes. But Juma, small, hesitant, had been swept slightly downstream. By the time he managed to scramble onto the bank, the others were gone, silhouettes shrinking into the haze of the savannah. His trunk curled upward nervously, sniffing the air. He called out with a shrill trumpet, more a plea than a cry. But only the rustle of grass responded. Alone, Juma wandered a few steps forward, then paused. His legs trembled slightly, not yet from exhaustion, but from the gnawing uncertainty that had crept into his young heart. Far across the plain, under the shadow of a cluster of thorn trees, 5 lionesses moved with practiced silence. Their golden coats blended seamlessly into the sunlit grass, their muscles taut beneath sleek fur. At the center of the pride was Nala, a seasoned huntress whose pale amber eyes scanned the horizon. Her breath was slow, controlled, as she observed the movements of zebras grazing nearby. But her ears twitched when she heard the faint trumpet in the distance. Nala tilted her head. The sound was not typical of an adult elephant, too high, too urgent. Her gaze shifted, narrowing on a lone, gray speck along the riverbank. The wind changed, bringing with it a new scent. Young elephant. Alone, vulnerable. She motioned with a flick of her tail, and the pride shifted course, their paws making no sound over the sun-baked earth. Miles away, atop a gentle ridge overlooking the reserve, 2 rangers sat in a beige 4x4 vehicle equipped with solar panels, antennas, and a controller console. Elliot, the team leader, leaned forward with binoculars pressed to his eyes. A veteran of over 2 decades in the Mara, his face bore the calm of someone who had seen both beauty and brutality on this land. Beside him sat Grace, a young wildlife conservationist fresh from university, her notepad balanced on her knees, recording observations from the morning patrol. Grace adjusted her cap and pointed toward a glowing dot on the monitor in front of them. "We've got movement." Drone 3 picked up something unusual by the Sand River. Elliot nodded. "Let's see it." With a few keystrokes, the flycam's feed shifted on the screen. A high-definition image appeared, first a wide sweep of the plains, then zooming in with startling clarity on the tiny figure of Juma. The calf paced near the edge of the trees, flapping his ears, raising dust with each nervous step. "He's alone," Grace said softly. Her voice betrayed both wonder and worry. Elliot frowned. "That's not good. Calves don't wander off by choice. The herd must have crossed in a hurry, maybe startled by something." Grace was already checking coordinates. "We're not far. Should we send in a unit?" "Wait," Elliot said, raising a hand. "Look." The drone's camera panned slightly, catching a flicker of motion in the grass. 5 tawny figures appeared from the underbrush, gliding like shadows. "Lions," Elliot muttered. "That calf's in serious danger." Grace's eyes widened. "Should we intervene?" Elliot hesitated. "The rule is non-interference unless it's an endangered individual or an unnatural situation. But a lone calf that young, he won't stand a chance." Grace stared at the screen. The drone's camera now focusing on the slow approach of the lionesses. Juma hadn't noticed them yet. He was still facing the river. Trumpet calls quieter now, almost as though he sensed the encroaching danger. "Wait. He's tagged," Grace said suddenly, pointing to a faint glimmer on the calf's right ear. Elliot zoomed in. A tiny metallic tag glinted in the sunlight. The tracking code confirmed it. Juma was part of a research study on juvenile elephant behavior during migration seasons. "That changes everything," Elliot said, already reaching for the radio. "Juma's part of the protected cohort. We move in." Grace grabbed the drone controller, switching its course to hover above the lionesses. The quiet whirring of the flycam wasn't loud enough to disturb them. But it gave a bird's-eye view that made coordination easier. "We need to buy him time," Elliot said. "Scare him off. Or at least distract them long enough for us to get close." Grace nodded and activated the drone's noise emitter, typically used for testing animal response during behavioral studies. The high-pitched whine pierced the silence, startling the lionesses for just a moment. Nala turned her head toward the strange sound above. The pride slowed, unsure. That was all the time Juma needed. The drone's noise had reached his ears as well. He spun, eyes wide, finally seeing the predators creeping in. With a terrified trumpet, he bolted, hooves pounding against the dusty ground. "Go, go, go," Elliot shouted, shifting the vehicle into gear. The 4x4 roared to life and bounded down the slope. The lionesses, startled but undeterred, fanned out. Nala growled low, trying to regain their focus. They hadn't had a successful kill in 3 days. A calf would feed them for a week. She surged forward. From the sky, the drone continued its surveillance, tracking the chase as Juma darted through sparse underbrush. The calf's tiny legs were fast, driven by pure instinct and terror, but the lionesses were faster. And the gap was closing. Elliot's voice crackled over the radio, sending a coded alert to the closest patrol station. "This is Ranger Team 1. We have an at-risk juvenile elephant under pursuit by a pride of lions. GPS coordinates uploading now. Request backup." Grace, still piloting the drone, sent it lower, the camera zooming in on Juma's frantic path. Suddenly, she spotted something, dust rising to the south. "Wait, there's movement ahead." Large figures. Elephants. Elliot grabbed the binoculars and confirmed it. The herd, Juma's herd, was returning, likely drawn by the noise or perhaps by Juma's distant calls. The matriarch was at the front, ears spread wide, trunk raised in alarm. "Smart old girl," Elliot muttered with a grin. She heard him. The lionesses had seen him too. Nala paused, growling under her breath. A confrontation with a full-grown herd wasn't worth the risk. The pride scattered, melting back into the tall grass like spirits. Juma stumbled as he ran, legs giving out just as the herd arrived. The matriarch rushed to him, trumpeting furiously, her massive form shielding him from any remaining threat. Other adults formed a protective circle around the calf. And within moments, Juma was safe, enveloped in the comfort of his family. Grace leaned back, breathless. "We almost lost him. But we didn't," Elliot said, exhaling slowly. The drone hovered silently now, watching the reunited herd move slowly away from the riverbank. Juma, though still shaken, trotted close to the matriarch, his small trunk touching her tail as they walked. Grace turned to Elliot. "Do you think he'll remember this?" Elliot looked out across the savannah, now glowing with the full blaze of morning light. "Elephants never forget," he said, "but more importantly, he'll learn, and maybe one day, he'll be the one protecting others." Above, the drone turned gently in the breeze, its camera capturing the vast, golden plains of the Masai Mara, where every life told a story. And every story was part of something far greater. The sun had climbed higher, casting a white heat over the open plains of the Masai Mara. The grasses shimmered with gold, swaying gently in the dry wind. But the beauty of the land belied the danger it concealed. Juma, the young elephant calf, wandered clumsily through the high grass, his small frame weaving aimlessly. His ears flapped weakly, more in confusion than any attempt to cool himself. The brief burst of safety earlier that morning had vanished. Somehow, during the confusion of the herd's return and retreat, spooked by some noise or perhaps by the drone's sudden descent, he had been separated again. Now, the warm midday air buzzed with the sound of insects and tension. The world seemed too big, too quiet. Juma stopped and lifted his trunk, letting out another high-pitched trumpet. It cut through the stillness like a blade, desperate and longing. There was no answer, no rumble of the matriarch, no soft calls from his siblings. Only the wind, from a low ridge nearby. A pair of yellow eyes watched. Then a second, then a third. Nala lay stretched in the grass, chin resting lightly on her crossed paws. Around her, the other lionesses waited in crouched silence. Their bellies were hollow, ribs showing through their sleek fur. The failed chase earlier had not dissuaded them. It had only deepened their hunger. They had tracked the calf from a distance, careful not to alert the drone overhead. Now the sky was clear, the machine gone, and the calf was alone again. Nala gave a subtle grunt. The others responded immediately, fanning out. Years of instinct guided their movements, silent, practiced, deadly. One circled left, brushing through the dry stalks like wind. Another veered right, crouching so low her belly grazed the earth. Juma's ears twitched. Something wasn't right. The air had changed again. A distant sound, rustling. He turned abruptly, swinging his trunk as if it could ward off the unease creeping into his small bones. Another step forward, A pause. Then a flicker of movement. A lioness, eyes locked on the calf, emerged from the grass directly ahead. Blocking his path, Juma froze. To his left, another figure rose slowly from the golden grass. To the right, two more shapes appeared. The circle was closing. Juma spun in place, lifting his trunk and trumpeting in panic. The sound thinner this time. His voice almost hoarse. He backed away, but there was no direction to run. The lionesses had positioned themselves with careful precision. Nala's plan was unfolding with lethal grace. A growl rumbled from behind. Juma turned just in time to see the fifth lioness. Muscles coiled, launching herself from the shadows. She sprang, claws extended, her eyes wild with hunger. Instinct took over. With a startled squeal, Juma swung his head, lifting his trunk just as the lioness reached him. Her teeth snapped for his ear, but his trunk connected midair, striking her head with surprising force. The lioness yelped, thrown slightly off course, and landed awkwardly to the side in a puff of dust. She scrambled up, ears flat, but the momentary delay had saved the calf. For now, Juma stumbled backward, legs shaking, his breathing fast and shallow. His heart pounded against his ribs. And he tried to run, but his strength was fading. The encounter had drained what little energy remained in his small, exhausted body. He tripped on a clump of grass and fell onto his side with a heavy thud. The lionesses paused. They could smell the weakness now, tangy and real. This was no longer a chase. It was a matter of patience. Nala moved forward, slow and deliberate. She was too experienced to rush. She could see the calf's trembling legs, his heaving sides. She knew he couldn't go far. From his place on the ground, Juma tried to rise, managing only to lift his front legs before collapsing again. His eyes darted between the predators, terrified and wide. Another lioness crept closer, stepping almost silently over the parched grass. She was less than 10 meters away now, her body low, her muscles taut, ready to spring. Juma lifted his trunk again, but it fell limply across his face. His reserves were gone. In the distant ridge, the hum of an engine broke the silence. The lioness froze. Then another sound, higher pitched, mechanical. A shadow passed overhead. The drone. It had returned. Nala's ears flicked backward. She knew that sound now, foreign and persistent. The other lionesses shifted uneasily. The strange flying object had interrupted them once before. Now it hovered again, just loud enough to disturb the moment. Juma's glazed eyes followed the movement above. The drone circled, and then the sound of tires on dirt grew louder. A vehicle appeared on the horizon. It bounced over the rough terrain, barreling toward the scene in a cloud of dust. On board were Elliot and Grace, their faces tense, their equipment ready. "Hold tight, little one," Grace whispered under her breath. The lionesses, reluctant but not foolish, began to retreat into the grass. Nala lingered the longest. She looked once more at the calf, so small, so close. But the risk now outweighed the reward. With a flick of her tail, she turned and vanished, her pride following silently behind. The drone hovered in place, its camera capturing the final steps of their retreat. Juma lay still. His sides rose and fell in shallow breaths. He didn't even have the strength to trumpet this time. The 4x4 skidded to a halt. Grace jumped down before it had fully stopped. Running to the calf's side with a tranquilizer case and first aid pack. "Vitals are weak," she said quickly, placing a hand gently on Juma's side. "But he's alive. Just exhausted." Elliot opened a satellite phone. "Contact mobile unit from base camp. We'll need the transport cradle." Grace sprayed a cooling mist over Juma's ears and feet. "Hang in there, sweetheart." The sun beat down, unforgiving, but there was shade now. Elliot had raised a tarp over the calf to block direct sunlight. Minutes passed. Then a distant rumble signaled the approach of the rescue vehicle. Within an hour, Juma was gently lifted onto a canvas stretcher mounted on a custom flatbed. The team worked quickly but with care. Grace stayed beside him, one hand on his side, speaking softly the entire time. "We'll get you home," she said. "You've been so brave." As they drove back across the savannah, the land stretched endlessly around them, beautiful and wild. But for now, the danger had passed. Juma closed his eyes, the sound of the engine lulling him into a restless sleep. In his dreams, he could hear his mother's call, faint, but growing stronger. The dry wind swept over the low hills of the Masai Mara, stirring small spirals of dust into the morning air. At the edge of a rocky outcrop stood the research outpost, an unassuming structure of weathered wood and metal siding, its rooftop bristling with antennas and satellite dishes. Inside, the air buzzed softly with the hum of electronics and quiet urgency. Grace sat hunched over a console, the blue light from the monitors reflecting off her glasses. The room smelled faintly of dust, sunscreen, and warm metal. It was barely 7 a.m., but she and Elliot had been awake since before dawn, reviewing movement data from tagged wildlife across the reserve. One monitor suddenly blinked. A red indicator appeared on the digital map of the Mara. The label read, "Drone 2 alert. Unusual lion concentration detected." Grace straightened. "Elliot," she called, "we've got something." The veteran ranger appeared from the back room carrying a mug of thick black coffee. "Show me." She tapped the alert, and the screen expanded to show a drone feed in real time, high-definition aerial footage of a wide expanse of grassland. The drone had been performing a routine patrol over the southeastern quadrant, an area not typically known for predator activity during this season. The footage now revealed something unusual. 5 lionesses, their sleek bodies huddled together in the shade of a rock outcrop. 2 more paced just beyond them, alert, tails twitching. Elliot narrowed his eyes. "That's too many in one spot. And too far from the usual hunting grounds. This isn't migration zone traffic." Grace was already running calculations. 70% of our tagged prey species are currently in the northern corridor. There's nothing here to justify a hunt. Elliot leaned closer to the screen. "Zoom in." Grace pinched outward on the touchscreen. The drone's camera obeyed. The view tightened, and then they saw it. A small gray figure, half hidden by tall grass, lying near the edge of the lioness's formation. "Oh no," Grace whispered. "Is that?" Elliot already had his field binoculars raised, staring through the observation window. Though the subject was many kilometers away, he turned back to the screen. "Get me an id, now." Grace pulled up the tracking overlay and engaged facial and tag recognition software. It scanned the drone feed for distinct physical markers: ear shape, tusk formation, tag ID, and trunk pattern. A ping, then a confirmation. Subject: Juma, male calf, age approximately 1.1 years. Mother: Kendi, tag number 482K. Behavioral Study Group, Herd 11. "It's Juma," Grace confirmed, her voice tight. "Kendi's calf." Elliot's expression darkened. Again, the calf had already endured 2 close encounters in the last month. This time, he might not get another chance. Grace tapped in a few more commands and overlaid the lioness positions against Juma's GPS. "They're not attacking yet. It looks like they're watching him. He must be injured or collapsed again," Elliot said. "Or maybe dehydrated. Either way, he's not moving." She checked telemetry. His movement has been minimal for the past 3 hours. Heart rate is elevated, stress levels spiking. "How far out are we?" Elliot asked. 20 minutes by road, 15 if we take the ridge cut," Grace replied. He slammed his mug down. "We'll make it in 15. Let's go." Outside, the vehicle was already half loaded from the morning rounds. Grace grabbed the emergency medical kit and drone controller while Elliot keyed in coordinates to the onboard nav system. Within a minute, the engine rumbled to life, and they tore out across the savannah, tires sending clouds of dust trailing behind. Inside the truck, Grace watched the drone feed from her tablet. "He's still lying down. They're circling closer. Keep eyes on them," Elliot said, swerving expertly around a rock-strewn path. "If they start coordinating a surround, we'll trigger the audio disruptor again." Grace adjusted the settings. "I've got the emitter on standby." They sped through dry riverbeds and over low ridges, every second ticking louder in their minds. At this pace, they had a narrow window, 15 minutes to intercept a potentially fatal situation. And the lions were hungry. Too hungry. Back at the scene, the lionesses began to stir. Nala, leading again, lifted her head. Her ears twitched at a distant vibration. The rumble of an engine. She wasn't sure yet, but her focus remained on the calf. Juma lay motionless except for the twitch of his ears and the rapid flutter of his chest. He had wandered too far the night before, following a scent trail he'd mistaken for the herd. Hours later, he'd collapsed under the heat and weight of fear. Now he barely had the strength to lift his head. The lionesses moved deliberately. One padded forward, then 2 others flanked her, silent, expert, deadly. Juma blinked slowly, dazed. His body didn't respond to the rising sense of threat. Above, the drone made a sharp turn, responding to Grace's new command. It hovered directly above the Pride and dropped altitude. Then the emitter activated. A sudden burst of mechanical chirps and high-pitched whines filled the air. The lionesses paused, startled. Nala looked up, eyes narrowing. The same sound. Again. They had lost a meal before because of that noise. Now it was back, buzzing like an angry hornet, drawing lines across the sky. The lions hesitated. They didn't flee yet, but the spell was broken. Eliad's vehicle crested the final hill at full speed, suspension straining under the weight. From the top of the ridge, they could see everything: the lions, the calf, the shadow of the drone, and the growing tension. 10 seconds, Grace said, voice taut. Eliad nodded, pressing the pedal down hard. Get the deterrent ready. The vehicle roared over the last patch of uneven ground, then skidded to a halt a mere 100 meters from the lions. A second drone launched from the roof mount, this one equipped with motion strobes and a proximity alarm. Grace activated the sequence. The effect was immediate. The flashing lights and harsh, rhythmic beeps cut through the natural calm of the savanna. The lionesses jerked back, growling lowly, tails lashing. Nala let out a deep growl, staring at the newcomers. Then, recognizing the danger and the increasing human presence, she gave a signal grunt. Reluctantly, the pride withdrew, scattering into the tall grass like golden smoke. Juma remained still. Grace ran to him with Eliad close behind, both crouching at his side. Dehydration and heat fatigue, she said after a quick scan. But his vitals are stable enough. Eliad gently touched the calf's forehead. You're tougher than you look. Grace connected a portable IV line and began misting his body with a hydrating spray. Within minutes, Juma twitched, his eyes fluttering open. He's responding, she said with a sigh of relief. In the distance, the lionesses lingered at the edge of the grassland, eyes still watching, but they would not return. Not today. As the drone hovered overhead, its camera panning outward, the scene shifted once more to calm. The danger had been detected. The threat deflected. The calf was safe again, thanks to vigilance, technology, and the human hearts that refused to let him be forgotten. Back at base, the alert light on the console turned green. Mission status: intervention successful. The midday heat shimmered off the savanna floor, waves of rising air bending the horizon like liquid glass. But inside the ranger station, urgency overpowered heat. Juma, the lost elephant calf, was in immediate danger, again. His location was confirmed. The pride of lions had regrouped, and though drone surveillance had momentarily startled them, they remained too close, too focused, too hungry. In the control room, Eliad stood at the operations board, already pulling a map from the wall. Grace snapped shut her first aid pack and slung it over her shoulder. Time was running out. We can't airlift him out, Grace said, breath quick. Too risky. They're too close. Agreed, Eliad said. We'll need to guide him out on foot, back toward the last known location of Herd 11. I already pinged the mother's chip, she added. Kendi is about 8 kilometers southeast and moving in our direction. She's been called in via the ranges near Salt Rock Pass. Eliad nodded. Good. We'll draw the calf toward her. Slowly. Within 5 minutes, the two were back in their modified Jeep, equipped with external speakers, sound projectors, and an aerial drone pad. As the vehicle roared to life and began bounding across the terrain, Grace activated the speaker system and uploaded a series of recorded elephant calls, specifically low-frequency rumbles of mother-calf communication. She selected a recording of Kendi's own call signature, captured weeks earlier during a tracking session. "It's a long shot," she said, cueing the file, "but if he can hear this, it might anchor him in place or even draw him toward us." From the speakers came a gentle, throaty rumble, the unmistakable voice of an elephant mother calling her calf. "Let's just hope he still has enough strength to respond," Elliot muttered, shifting gears as the Jeep kicked up dust behind them. Overhead, the drone swept ahead, its camera trained on the lions. The Pride was restless. The earlier disruptions had made them cautious, but they were not yet retreating. Nala, the Pride leader, sat upright in the grass, her eyes trained on the collapsed form of Juma. She was no longer moving in for the kill, but she hadn't turned away either. Then the drone descended. Grace lowered it to just above tree height, activating a new layer of deterrence, a low, pulsating mechanical hum, rising in pitch and volume, combined with a sudden flare of strobes from the drone's undercarriage. The scene changed rapidly. Nala flinched, her ears flattening. One of the younger lionesses snarled, crouching as if to defend herself from the air. The sound was unlike anything natural, strange and disorienting. The lions began to back away. From the ground, the speakers on the Jeep issued another of Kendi's calls, stronger this time, overlapping with the drone's hovering agitation. Juma, still lying in the grass, blinked. His ears twitched. He lifted his head slightly, then dropped it again. But the sound had reached him. Grace tapped Elliot's shoulder. He heard it. He moved. "We're close," Elliot said, steering hard around a termite mound. "Get the flares ready." In minutes, they came into view. The lions were scattered now, still within sight, but repositioning. Several stood warily near the edges of a bushy thicket. Nala, however, remained where she was, crouched low and watching Juma from a distance of less than 30 meters. Elliot made his decision fast. "We go loud." He accelerated straight toward the lioness, tires hammering over dirt and roots. The noise was deafening. He blared the Jeep's horn, switched on the strobe headlights, and hit the throttle again. At the same time, Grace stood through the open roof and fired 2 signal flares into the sky. The bright flashes hissed and screamed upward, exploding into crackling light high above the plains. That was the final straw. The lionesses bolted. Even Nala, momentarily torn between hunger and survival, made her choice. She turned and loped after her pride, disappearing into the grass and brush. Retreating westward, the drone followed them for several seconds, confirming their exit. Elliot slammed the brakes and jumped out. Grace. She was already running to Juma, her bag bouncing against her hip. She dropped beside him, gently brushing dust from his flank. "He's weak," she said, checking his vitals. But he's alert. He responded to Kendi's call. Can he stand? Let's find out. They moved carefully, coaxing him with soft words and more playback from the speaker system. Grace even played the sound of other calves, familiar and comforting. Slowly, Juma shifted. His legs wobbled, then bent. With a deep groan, he pushed himself upright. Yes, Grace gasped. Come on, Juma, let's go home. Elliot opened a bag of cut acacia pods and dropped a few on the ground near Juma's feet, familiar food. The calf sniffed, hesitated, then nibbled. His energy returned with each bite. When the vehicle turned and began rolling slowly forward, the speaker playing Kendi's call in rhythmic intervals, Juma followed. He stumbled at first, but then found his pace. Grace monitored the GPS as they moved southeast. Kendi's close, less than a kilometer now. She's moving quickly. Probably already picked up his scent or heard the calls. Elliot smiled faintly. She's coming. They crested a small rise and looked down into a shallow depression filled with low shrubs and a patch of short trees. There, moving through the foliage with ears flared and trunk raised, was a massive female elephant. Unmistakable and determined. Kendi, Grace whispered. The mother elephant trumpeted, a rich, booming call that echoed across the plain. Juma's ears lifted. He let out a thin, high trumpet of his own, stumbling forward faster now, no longer led by the jeep, but by instinct and love. He ran across the field. Kendi did the same. Her great legs pounded the earth, closing the distance in great, sweeping strides. They met in the center of the plain. The moment was raw and powerful. Kendi reached her trunk down and wrapped it gently around her calves. Brushing him, pulling him close, Juma pressed his head into her shoulder. Rumbling softly, she sniffed him all over, checking for injury, then turned, placing herself between him and the last known location of the lions. Elliot and Grace stood silently beside the jeep, watching. No matter how many times I see it, Grace said, it still hits me. Elliot nodded, eyes never leaving the pair. That's what we fight for. Not just survival, reunion. Wholeness. Behind them, the drone hovered silently, its lens catching the moment, the vast expanse of the Mara. The long shadows of afternoon light. The dust rising as mother and calf moved slowly back toward the herd now converging on the horizon. Mission complete. Danger averted. And Juma, still young, still learning, was home again. The sun hung low in the western sky, its golden rays filtering through acacia branches, painting the Mara in soft amber light. Dust stirred gently around the hooves of the approaching herd, Herd 11, moving in tight formation as they neared the shallow depression where the reunion was unfolding. In the center stood Kendi, a fully grown matriarch with a commanding presence and gentle eyes. And at her side was her calf, Juma, smaller, still weak, but upright and safe. The moment of their reunion had been like something out of myth. Kendi had rushed forward, her ears wide, her great feet pounding the dry earth in thunderous rhythm. Her trunk had stretched out ahead of her, searching, longing. Juma had responded with a wobbly trumpet. eyes lighting up at the sound of her voice. When they finally met, it was with a force of emotion that silenced even the ever-watchful birds. Kendi had wrapped her trunk protectively around Juma's, brushing him, inspecting him, and then rumbling low in her chest, a deep, resonant sound that only elephants truly understood, a song of love, of worry, of relief. The rest of the herd had arrived moments later. Adult females formed a circle around mother and calf, trumpeting and rumbling in a chorus of familial joy. Several calves approached Juma to greet him, brushing against him softly as if to reassure him that he was safe and welcome. Grace stood at a respectful distance beside Elliot, recording the scene with her shoulder-mounted camera. Her hands trembled slightly, not from exertion, but from emotion. "I'll never get used to this," she whispered. Elliot gave a faint smile, his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the herd. Few people ever get to see something this pure. Juma nestled close to Kendi now, her trunk draped lightly across his back. He still bore the signs of his ordeal, dust-matted skin, faint scrapes along his flank, but he was alive. He was whole. Grace turned toward the camera lens. After adjusting the focus, she took a breath and spoke directly to it. "If we hadn't had the drone," she began, her voice calm but passionate. "If we didn't have the GPS tags, the remote monitors, or the sound lures, Juma would be gone. This calf would have been another silent statistic in a world where loss is often invisible." She paused, letting the hum of the savannah fill the air. Technology didn't replace nature today. It protected it. It gave us a chance to intervene in time, to give this calf a second chance, and to bring him back to his mother. Behind her, Kendi lifted her head toward the sky and let out a long, rich trumpet. The sound echoed across the plain. A statement, a declaration. Grace smiled through the tears forming in her eyes. That is the sound of something worth saving. 2 weeks later, back at the research station, Grace sat in front of a monitor reviewing the footage they had collected. The scene of the reunion had been edited with care. Drone shots sweeping across the Golden Plains, interspersed with close-ups of Juma's eyes, the charging lions, and the final moment of embrace between mother and calf. She clicked "Upload." The video, titled "Juma's Journey: A Calf's Second Chance," went live. Within hours, it had been shared by multiple conservation groups. By the next morning, international news outlets picked it up. Wildlife organizations from Kenya to California reposted it. Celebrities and scientists alike praised the message. Parents showed their children. Classrooms discussed the themes. Conservation took center stage. The story was simple, but powerful: a young elephant lost, predators circling, and a daring human-led rescue guided by drones. Compassion, and the bond between mother and child. One comment summed it up perfectly: "We always hear about what humans destroy. It's time we celebrate what they save." At the next ranger briefing, Elliot stood beside a new drone unit, freshly painted with a sleek, silvery gray body. On its side, just below the camera mount, was a new name stenciled in green: Juma Guardian. He looked around at the assembled rangers and research staff. "This drone saved a life," he said. "It gave us eyes in the sky when we had no time left. From now on, it'll carry a new name. And a new mission. Every patrol, every scan, every sweep, it carries Juma's legacy." The group broke into a quiet ripple of applause. But Elliot wasn't done. "This isn't just about a drone or a calf," he added. "This is about the future of conservation. About how tradition and technology must work together. About why we train, why we study, why we protect." Grace stepped forward and placed her hand on the drone's wing. "He survived," she said, "and now he's a symbol. A reminder of what's at stake every day we come to work." Outside the station, on a small slope overlooking the plains, Juma's silhouette could be seen in the distance. Moving beside his mother, though still young, he walked taller now, with a steadier step. A month passed. Then too, tourists visiting the reserve often asked about the elephant calf from the video. Many of them were moved to donate. Some sponsored rangers or funded new drone equipment. A portion of the proceeds from a newly launched Juma Guardian educational campaign was used to build a mobile vet unit and install a solar-powered charging hub for patrol vehicles. Back at the field lab, a wall was slowly being filled with drawings from children all over the world, sketches of elephants with big ears and hopeful eyes. Many of them simply said, "Thank you for saving Juma." Grace looked at them every morning before she headed out. And Juma, he continued to grow, slowly, steadily. His wounds healed. His confidence returned. Whenever Kendi led the herd across the plains, Juma was never far behind, sometimes playfully chasing birds, sometimes rubbing against other calves, but always staying close. There were other dangers ahead. That much was certain. The Mara was wild, unpredictable, and full of both wonder and peril. But Juma had survived, and now, he had the eyes of the world behind him. One quiet evening, as the sky turned the color of ember and shadows stretched long across the land, Grace stood on the observation deck with a pair of binoculars. She spotted the herd in the distance, still intact, still whole. Kendi walked with Grace, and Juma, just behind her, raised his trunk toward the wind. "I wonder what he'll become," she murmured. Elliot stepped up beside her, arms crossed. "He'll become what he was meant to be," he replied. "A leader, maybe, a guardian in his own right." They stood in silence as the sun dipped below the acacia trees. In the vastness of the savannah, beneath a sky full of stars, one story among many had found its way into hearts around the world. The story of Juma, the calf who survived, the calf who reminded the world why conservation matters.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.